History is shaped by moments of uncertainty, and few moments in human civilization carried as much emotional weight, spiritual responsibility, and political danger as the days following the passing of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in 632 CE. For over 2 decades, the Prophet had not only transformed Arabia spiritually but had also unified tribes that had spent generations locked in warfare. His leadership created a society built upon faith, justice, equality, and accountability before God. However, when he passed away, the Muslim community suddenly found itself standing at the edge of uncertainty. The question was no longer simply about survival of faith but about preservation of unity, governance, and the future direction of a rapidly growing civilization. The emergence of the Rashidun Caliphate, often translated as the rightly guided caliphate, marked one of the most remarkable periods in Islamic history. It was a time when leadership was defined not by wealth or hereditary rule but by moral authority, personal sacrifice, consultation, and commitment to justice. Yet, despite its extraordinary achievements, the Rashidun Caliphate would also experience internal tensions, political conflicts, and tragic divisions that would ultimately lead to its transformation. The immediate aftermath of the Prophet's passing created a moment of deep shock among the companions. Many could not even accept the reality of his death. Among them was Umar ibn Al-Khattab, who initially refused to believe that the Prophet had passed away, warning that anyone who claimed so would face consequences. It was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, one of the Prophet's closest companions, and father-in-law, who stood before the grieving community and delivered one of the most powerful speeches in Islamic history. He reminded the Muslims that whoever worshipped Muhammad should know that Muhammad had died, but whoever worshipped Allah should know that Allah is eternal and never dies. This statement not only calmed the community but also recentered Islam around its core belief, the worship of God alone rather than attachment to any individual leader. In that moment, Abu Bakr demonstrated the clarity, wisdom, and emotional strength that would soon define his leadership. The selection of the first caliph was not predetermined. Unlike monarchies where succession follows bloodline, early Muslim leadership emerged through consultation among senior companions. At a gathering in Saqifa, members of the Ansar, the native supporters of Medina, discussed leadership among themselves. However, the Muhajirin, the migrants from Mecca, soon joined the discussion. After intense debate, the companions recognized Abu Bakr's qualifications. He was among the earliest converts to Islam, had supported the Prophet through persecution, financed important missions, and was chosen by the Prophet himself to lead prayers during his final illness. Umar ibn Al-Khattab pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr, and soon others followed, marking the beginning of the Rashidun Caliphate. Abu Bakr's caliphate began under extremely fragile circumstances. Several tribes across Arabia began abandoning their allegiance to Medina. Some refused to pay zakat, the mandatory charity that functioned as both spiritual obligation and social welfare system. Others followed false prophets who claimed divine revelation after Prophet Muhammad. These rebellions threatened not only political unity but also the very foundations of Islam as a religion. Abu Bakr made a bold and controversial decision. He declared that zakat and prayer were inseparable pillars of Islam and announced that he would fight any group that attempted to separate them. Many companions, including Umar, initially worried that fighting fellow Arabs could weaken the young Muslim state. However, Abu Bakr remained firm, demonstrating remarkable leadership and conviction. The Ridda Wars, or Wars of Apostasy, became the first major test of the Rashidun Caliphate. Muslim forces launched campaigns across Arabia, confronting rebellious tribes and false prophets. Among the most famous battles was the Battle of Yarmouk against Musaylama, one of the most influential false claimants to prophethood. The battle was extremely intense and resulted in heavy casualties among Muslim forces, including many who had memorized the Quran. This tragic loss later played a crucial role in initiating the compilation of the Quran into a written manuscript to preserve it for future generations. Ultimately, the Ridda Wars succeeded in restoring unity across Arabia. Abu Bakr's decisive actions ensured that Islam would not fragment into regional sects or tribal variations. Despite his success in stabilizing Arabia, Abu Bakr understood that unity alone was not enough. The rapidly growing Muslim society required structure, governance, and protection against external threats. Two major empires dominated the surrounding regions at the time: the Byzantine Empire in the west and the Sasanian Persian Empire in the east. Both had ruled vast territories for centuries and possessed powerful military forces. Abu Bakr authorized expeditions toward both empires, not simply for expansion but also to counter potential threats and spread Islamic governance beyond Arabia. These campaigns marked the beginning of what would soon become one of the most rapid territorial expansions in world history. However, Abu Bakr's leadership was marked by simplicity and humility. Despite ruling a growing state, he continued living modestly. He personally supervised public affairs, remained accessible to citizens, and refused to accumulate wealth from public treasury. Before his death in 634 CE, Abu Bakr made a decision that would shape the future of the caliphate. Through consultation with senior companions, he nominated Umar ibn Al-Khattab as his successor. While some initially feared Umar's strict personality, Abu Bakr recognized his unmatched sense of justice, discipline, and administrative ability. Umar ibn Al-Khattab's caliphate would transform the Muslim world in ways few could have imagined. Known for his strength, fearlessness, and deep sense of accountability before God, Umar approached leadership as a responsibility rather than a privilege. Under his rule, Muslim forces achieved extraordinary victories against both the Byzantine and Persian empires. The Battle of Yarmouk in 636 CE resulted in a decisive victory against Byzantine forces, opening the gates to Syria and Palestine. Shortly after, the Battle of Qadisiyah dealt a devastating blow to the Persian Empire, eventually leading to the fall of the Sasanian dynasty. These victories expanded Muslim territories across Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Persia within a remarkably short period. Yet Umar's greatest achievements extended far beyond military conquests. He established administrative systems that laid foundations for Islamic governance. He introduced public treasury management known as Bayt al-Mal, created salary systems for soldiers and officials, established judicial courts, and organized provinces under appointed governors who were regularly monitored. Umar also implemented welfare programs ensuring financial support for the poor, elderly, and disabled, regardless of religious background. His leadership philosophy was deeply rooted in justice. Numerous historical accounts describe Umar walking through the streets of Medina at night to personally check on citizens' conditions. In one famous story, he encountered a mother cooking stones in a pot to comfort her hungry children, pretending food was being prepared. Umar immediately returned to the treasury, carried sacks of flour himself, and personally cooked food for the family. When a companion offered to carry the load, Umar reportedly replied, asking whether the companion would carry his burden on the day of judgment. Umar's governance also emphasized accountability. He required governors to publicly declare their wealth before taking office and after leaving office to prevent corruption. He dismissed officials if complaints emerged regarding injustice or arrogance towards citizens. His policies established a governance model where rulers were considered servants of the people rather than masters over them. Even non-Muslim communities living under Muslim rule were granted protection and freedom of worship under agreements that became known as dhimmi protections. When Jerusalem surrendered to Muslim forces, Umar personally traveled to the city to accept its surrender peacefully. Historical records highlight his humility as he entered Jerusalem wearing simple clothing, refusing luxurious treatment, and guaranteeing safety for Christian holy sites. Despite his monumental achievements, Umar remained aware of his vulnerability as a human leader. In 644 CE, while leading the dawn prayer in Medina, he was attacked by a Persian slave named Abu Lulu'a and fatally wounded. As he lay dying, he refused to appoint a direct successor. Instead, he formed a council of 6 senior companions to select the next caliph through consultation, demonstrating his commitment to collective decision-making rather than personal authority. The council eventually selected Uthman ibn Affan as the 3rd caliph. Uthman was known for his generosity, kindness, and close companionship with the Prophet, having married 2 of the Prophet's daughters at different times. His caliphate initially continued the expansion and prosperity of the Muslim state. One of his most significant contributions was the standardization of the Quranic text. As Islam spread across diverse regions, variations in pronunciation and recitation began emerging. Uthman commissioned the compilation of a standardized Quranic manuscript and distributed copies across major provinces, preserving the Quran in its unified form for future generations. However, Uthman's later years witnessed growing political tension. Accusations emerged regarding nepotism, as some provincial governors were reportedly replaced with his relatives. While historical sources differ on the extent and fairness of these accusations, dissatisfaction among certain groups intensified. Political agitators traveled between provinces spreading criticism against Uthman's administration. Eventually, rebels surrounded his residence in Medina. Despite having loyal supporters willing to defend him, Uthman refused to allow bloodshed among Muslims. In 656 CE, rebels entered his home and assassinated him while he was reading the Quran. His death marked a turning point in Islamic history, as internal conflict replaced the unity that had defined earlier years.